Yes, everybody, welcome back to the Talking Wolves podcast for a brand new episode. Looking back at Saturday's game is Liverpool, looking ahead to Brentford next weekend and answering your questions. My name is Dave, as a party, and alongside me today we've got Joe from Concept Scouting. Joe, how you keeping, man?
All good, mate. All good. Good to see you. Good to speak to you.
Yeah, you too. It's been I mean, us too. We haven't really been able to. I mean, I've missed all the pods that you've done with Matt. Obviously, you were on with Jord a couple of weeks ago. So I know we were looking at getting a bit some content done. I think. What video was it now? The Kilman replacements video.
Yeah.
And then after a couple of, I mean, we didn't even get one in the end, so it's probably a good job that we,
that is a good job.
Yeah, we did do the video. I was going to say as well, I checked our Facebook memories. It's been 2 years since we went to Belgium today.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. So, yeah, we've mentioned it a few times on the podcast, but me, Joe and Matt went to watch Fabio Silva over in Belgium. We made a bit of a weekend of it, but that was a good laugh, 2 years already. So.
It was for everybody else's benefit, because Dave won't admit to this, but we discovered that Jaeger bombs aren't really Dave's thing, didn't we, mate?
Yeah. No comment. To give people, it was a long day. I was tired, and I'm not a brilliant drinker, as I pretty much admit weekly now on this podcast. And that Jaeger bomb. We've been on lagers all day. That Jaeger bomb, it went into my throat, and I thought, I can't swallow this, and I spat it straight back out into the drink. So, yeah. So Matt does warn me about that quite often. Yeah.
It was a good weekend. It was a really good weekend. That was the first real seeing Fabio Silva play for Anderlecht and look that bad. I think that was the kind of starting to see what the future held, and that's kind of proven true, sadly.
He went down injured after about 5 minutes, didn't he? We were like, oh no, we've come all the way here. He's going to get subbed off, but they were awful.
Well, I think it comes to the point when the kind of biggest take we took from that game was how good Julian Duranville looked. Yeah. That was we all came away from it, and he's kind of proven it since, hasn't he? But there wasn't much said about Fabio Silva after.
I remember that. Duranville, we looked at him and was like, wow, he looks really good. I searched him, 16 years old. We're like, okay, well, he might have been 15 at the time. I can't remember. He was just unbelievable.
He was unreal. Obviously, there's Dortmund now, isn't he? I think he's got minutes as well. So
good talent ID, mate. But we're talking about the you'd hope so. The Liverpool game this weekend, Joe. Another defeat for Wolves, so we remain winless. Wolves came out of it with a little bit more credit in the bank than I expected. When we did the preview and seeing tweets and posts, I think people were expecting us to lose by 3, 4, 5 goals, and it wasn't quite the case. The game, was a little bit closer than expected, and Wolves possibly could have, maybe should have come away with something. Talk to me, Joe. I mean, the back four was probably one of the biggest talking points, the centre backs in particular, because we just didn't know what was going on with Mosquera. Obviously, he was out injured. We didn't know who was going to start. I found out quite late on a Friday it was Dawson that had missed training with this sort of virus that's been going around. So got Totti through, but Totti and Santi Bueno started. I mean, they looked okay, to be fair. It looked probably, I know we conceded 2 goals, but fairly solid compared to what we've seen so far this season.
Yeah, to be honest, it was almost, other than the second half against Chelsea, it was quite a good indicator of pretty much where we've been for the whole of the rest of the season, because I thought Santi Bueno and Totti did well. Besides the goal, the goal from Konate, I think I wouldn't have any issue with them kind of continuing as they have. But it's just another example of kind of good but not good enough, and obviously the fixtures are a big part of that. And we could probably play as well as we did on Saturday against one of the bottom 6, bottom 8, and come out with a result, definitely, because I think we pushed them pretty close, but you just got to get over the line sometimes in these games. And I think the Arsenal game, we were in the game. The Chelsea game for the first half, we were in the game. The Liverpool game on Saturday, we were in the game until the last 25 minutes, and we're still in it. Still in it up to the final whistle. But the drop off in the last, I don't know what you thought, but the drop off in the last 15, 20 minutes, I was expecting something to come that we're used to seeing under kind of previous regimes. You used to seeing like that final push when we've had Adama previously. I thought Forbes was going to come on and perform that role and get us a result, and I thought he did all right, to be fair. But there seemed to be a real lack of cutting edge once Strand Larsen went off. For me, we didn't really look like getting anything after the penalty went in for me.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think Strand Larson. If we touch on that quickly, I don't think it was again wasn't his best game in a Wall shirt. I think people do need to appreciate probably that he's not been brought. Obviously, we want him to score goals, but I don't think that's his sole purpose in this team. Is to bring other players into play with his hold up play and so on. Huang, who came on for him, I'm sure we'll discuss as well. But yeah, I think you're right. The last sort of 20 minutes or so after the penalty, there's no real urgency, was there? It was as if we were happy with that result, which obviously is not the case. It was as if it was at 1-1 and we were playing like that, then fair enough. But there was no real urgency to get the ball forward and try and threaten Liverpool. I thought we started the second half quite brightly. A couple of times where the final ball could have been a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, Forbes, Joe, I liked the look of him. I think he added that urgency at times that we lacked. I thought Bellegarde had a really poor first half, to be honest. I'm actually surprised he came out for the second half, but I thought Bellegarde was poor. But Forbes came on, he just added something a little bit different. It is almost like Adama, like you've mentioned, just pure pace. A little bit raw still. I think you could tell that in terms of his ability maybe on the ball, but certainly gave Liverpool something to think about, didn't he, throughout that second half?
Yeah, he did. I completely agree with Bellegarde. I think partly, I think playing him in that position against Trent, I think he did a fairly good job at keeping Trent out of the game. Because to me, that seems like the rational thing to do. If you've got a right back who's as good as Trent is, and you've put someone who Bellegarde's a good presser, he's good defensively, he is good at very certain things. He's not gonna necessarily every time pick the ball up and beat three men and put a cross in. That's not really. It's never really been his game. He's played centrally. He's kind of defends from the front. That's always been his game. I think he did relatively well with that. But again, if you're at home and you've got players of the kind of creative forces that we have in the likes of Rodrigo Gomez, Carlos Forbes, Sarabia as well to a degree on the bench, sometimes you want to, regardless of whether it's Liverpool or not, and they proved that they were there for the take in the second half. I think a little bit more, proactive in the first half might have helped. But I think to bring Forbes on and then bring Wang on what was 10, 15 minutes later, if you're going to put the lad on, likes to beat his man, likes to get to the byline, likes to get crosses in, likes to kind of create, that's what Strand Larson wants, and you've took him off.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
Wang's game, I'm sure we'll come into it in a bit more detail. Wang's game's getting in behind, making those runs in behind. That's where his strengths have been, and kind of fox in the box type approach, which is great. But it just doesn't really. The two don't really work together.
No.
So the changes again, I've whinged about it on this podcast before, but the changes almost contradict each other.
Yeah.
If you're going to bring a winger on, leave your number 9 up now. If there's a fitness issue with Strand Larson, which I don't think there is, to be honest, but a lot of people seem to be suggesting that there's a fitness issue, and I definitely think there's a fitness issue in other areas of the squad. It's funny considering the statement Gary O'Neill made when he came in regarding the kind of state that Lopetegui left the squad in from a fitness perspective, which I thought at the time was a little bit underhand, and it's kind of proven to be the case now. So I would say we're less fit now than we were then, which doesn't look right to me. But I think with the masters of our own downfall again, and it's frustrating because we were probably all sat in the pub before the game thinking we're going to get tongs 5, 6, 7, and from the first 10 minutes that kind of appeared evident that wasn't going to happen because we looked like we were set up fairly well, and Liverpool weren't cutting through us at any point. I think that midfield three helps, but you want more, don't you? When the game's there to be had, there's a point there on the table with half an hour to go. Yeah, it's a daft penalty from Semedo. I don't know what he's doing, and he knows Jota well enough to. If you put your arms around him, he's going to hit the deck. We all know that. So that's ridiculous. On his big, I'll defend him more than I'll defend most players, but that's really really poor. Really. And we're as you probably say yourself after the goal that we scored, we were immediately back under pressure.
Yeah.
So you bring it on yourself, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, after the equaliser, you would have hoped that Wolves could have sat on that a little bit more, and I think. It would have been a nervy sort of last 10, 20 minutes or so if we were at 1-1 because I have no doubt we would have sat 11 men behind the ball and tried to defend it. But I think the frustrating thing was, and we sort of saw it towards stoppage time where we're knocking the ball around the back four rather than, getting it up and trying to find that equaliser. I mean, there's lots of points that you mentioned there. If I start with Hwang obviously coming on. What do you think is the issue with Hwang Jo? I think he only had one, maybe two touches throughout the rest of that game when he actually came onto the pitch. Is it a lack of form, or Wolves not playing to his strengths? Or you think it's a bit of both?
I kept an eye on him, to be fair, when he came on, because I don't think he's a world beater by a long way. Many have had this conversation in the past. I don't think he's necessarily going to be the game changer, albeit his numbers last season and in previous seasons have kind of proved otherwise. But I was watching him, and a lot of people seem to have this thing with certain players. Guedes gets it a lot. Francisco Trincao used to get it, where it's like he looks like he's not interested, which seems like a stock answer for someone who's shit a lot of the time. No, Trincao wasn't shit. Guedes isn't shit. I don't think Wang's shit, but the body language can sometimes give off that kind of vibe. I don't necessarily buy that. I think, and I did a piece on the scouting account a few weeks ago that he needs to be playing through the middle, which granted he came on and he did, but the style of play doesn't really lend itself to the way he plays. I think he's better up there with someone else. For us to push Wang, to push Wang into the middle and push Cunha out wide, Cunha was really out of the game then. He was picking the ball up in wide areas, he was beating his man, and then there's no real support there. You could just check it back to Aït-Nouri, and that seemed to be generally the way we went with it. So the Hwang having 1, 2, or 4 touches on SofaScore, that I haven't really necessarily got any issue with Hwang for that, because you need to give him the ball at the end of the day. You need to give him an opportunity. But when I was watching him, we were banging balls into him, kind of head high, and you've got Land of the Giants at the back marking him, and he's saying I want it into feet. I want it into my feet. Whereas we're just smashing the ball up top to him. Whereas we had a bloke who's, I think, Strand Larson 6'5", 6'6", and we've played it into feet for him. We've put the ball up top, we're playing it into his feet, and that's something that Strand Larson, for a big bloke, he's very good at. He will hold it up and he'll lay it off. That's what we've been missing for years. But then, in terms of personnel, then when Hwang comes on, we'd stop doing that and start lumping it up because we're getting desperate. And there seems to be a little bit of a lack of, I don't know, there was opportunities through the middle towards the end, I thought, the last 10 minutes, where like Joe Gomez were picking the ball up and we had options, and we were spraying it out to Forbes, and that kind of up to the final third, I thought we looked really good. But then, especially when Strand Larson went off, it kind of fell apart a little bit, and there was no real structure to it, which begs the question why we're not bringing Guedes on, maybe, for that kind of potential. He's got goals this season, and you like to think he's quite confident. He's sat on the bench. We've got Cunha look knackered, I thought, last 15, 20 minutes. You've got Rodrigo Gomez, you've got Sarabia on the bench. I think neither of them come on. Again, I feel like the answers are there. We whinged enough last season about the squad. The squad's there now for me. That squad can finish 12th quite comfortably, I would say.
Agreed. Yeah.
But we're not using it. We're not using it at all. If you look at like the Brighton game, second half we looked brilliant, and going forward we were so creative. And Saturday's a good example. You got players on the bench who can make an impact, but we're using the wrong players. We're using them and if we're using the right players, we're using them in the wrong system. So we could talk about systems and subs and stuff like that all day, because I just think it's. I know Gully's done a piece on it as well. We're just miles off, I think, from actual game management and setup and kind of creativity going forward. Because I do believe we've got the players. I think if you look at the likes of Brentford and Forest and those kind of players, those kind of clubs, I do creatively going forward in the final third, we've got players who are just as good as what they're doing.
100%.
But we're not creating enough for them. I know people have said the defence is the issue, and when you ship 6 goals at home to a team like Chelsea, then that's correct. But I also don't think we're doing enough going forward, really.
No, I agree. I think we haven't been ruthless enough at all this season. I think in terms of clear-cut chances, we had very few. Liverpool had to pretty much gift us, our goal. We'll talk about the goals in a second. Going back to Hwang, do you buy into this sort of conspiracy, Joe, that he's contractually obligated to have minutes every game, especially at home?
Yeah,
man, isn't it? You think that's
I think that has to be the case, because, and I don't want to get into a scapegoating situation, because it was all I heard coming out the South Bank on Saturday. All I could hear was fucking Hwang this, fucking Hwang that, and it's like it happens every week. Like Wang
Why don't we
Yi-chan
blame
is not the reason we
Semedo for
lost that
giving away the
game.
penalty
Yeah,
or this?
yeah.
Yeah,
Wang Yi-chan is not the reason we lost that game. You know,
yeah,
he might be the reason. He might have compounded the reason why we didn't look like scoring the last 20 minutes, but he's not the reason we lost the game. But obviously, there's some kind of setup. I saw someone make a point on Saturday saying, "Yeah, big Saturday night game against Liverpool. Asia are going to be all over that from an international perspective in terms of the broadcast." To me, with the players that you've got on the bench, there's no footballing reason why you would make that change. I understand if you're going two up top and you want to get Wang on as well, that would have maybe made sense to me because he's there for the knockdowns. He's there for if there's a chance in the box, the one bloke in the squad you want it to fall to is him. I get that, but contractually, I read something about Forbes the other day as well, where Forbes, if he makes 10 starts, that's the fee triggered. Expect to see Carlos Forbes coming off the bench a lot because he ain't going to be starting games.
yeah.
But it's disappointing for me, and I'm sure it's disappointing for Gary O'Neill, but he signed up to it, I think.
Yeah, I think the Forbes thing, they'll probably want him to have a similar sort of impact to maybe what we wanted from Adama, second half, coming off the bench. As a footballer, obviously you want to be starting every single football match, and I think there is maybe calls for him to start. I think Bellegarde may be out for Brentford game. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on. Let's talk about the chances and the goals, Joe. I mean, Sam Johnston, again, there's a couple of questions, or I've seen, a couple of points about him over social media over the weekend. At times, some very risky distribution from him. One or two passes going straight to the Liverpool front line, which, we can't afford to have. But also pulled off one or two very decent stops. The one, I think, about 5-10 minutes before their goal in particular, ball right across the face of goal to Salah. Looked like, dead on goal, and it was a top save. Interesting one with him. I mean, the distribution was a little bit questionable. Like I said, there were other times where I thought just some of his, they may have looked quite straightforward at the time, but some of his passes out wide were actually quite decent and not necessarily passes I would have expected Jose Sarr to make so cleanly. But the goal, the header was very powerful, pretty much. I'm not going to say straight at him because, that'd be harsh. I think it was a, difficult header to stop. For me, Joe, corner comes in, Wolves clear the lines and just sit on the edge of the box rather than trying to get out. Just re-inviting the pressure. I think Strand Larsen a little bit slow in reacting to the cross coming in. He was the player pressing at the time, and then obviously the free header. But when you've gone that long in the first half without conceding, look defensively fairly solid, it's frustrating to concede right on the brink of half time, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I was kind of 15 blokes deep in the bar queue by that point. So I was watching it on the screen, and my first instinct was we haven't closed that cross down.
Yeah.
I know it looks like a really bad kind of piece of marking in the box with a bloke who's fucking massive in the 6-yard box wide open, which it is. There's no getting away from that. But it was more the lead up to it. You know that Liverpool can put crosses in the box. You know they've got the players to deliver it. You know they've got the players in the box to kind of get on the end of them. So you've got to do your jobs really simply. You've got to do your jobs. Risk of sounding like 0-1. You've got to do your jobs in there. And we didn't close the cross down. We didn't mark him. I don't think Johnson can really. I think if you're being overly critical, maybe he needs to do a little bit better with it. But from a perspective of the goal, it's just a poor goal to concede. If you can concede that kind of goal against anybody. You can concede that kind of goal against Ipswich. If you send a big centre back up, if you leave a centre half open in the box and you let him get across it, and you leave him wide open, you're going to ship goals, and we've done that already this season. So that one's on the centre backs. Presumably, I haven't got the goal in front of me, but I assume that you'd like to think Totti or Santi were on Canate. That's one of them. I think from a Sam Johnson perspective, when me and Matt did the transfer podcast when it was first rumoured, I found it odd. I've not been on since to talk about Sam Johnson, I don't think, but I found that transfer odd because you're effectively replacing a bloke who has very clear strengths and very clear weaknesses with someone who has the same strengths and the same weaknesses. And I think he's a good shot stopper. That one from Salah, I think you mentioned, one of the best saves I've ever seen in person. That was up there with the Sarr one against Everton last season. It was just instinctive, clipped his foot and gone wide. It was right in front of us. So I've got no issue with him from a shot stopping perspective. And I've got, like you say, if someone bangs the ball into him, he's all right. If someone smashes a ball into him, it's almost like the more time he's got to think about it, similarly to Sarr, because Sarr's stats for kind of mid-range passes and long passes are up there. To be honest, they're not too bad at all. It's those kind of, I've got 5 seconds to piss about with the ball, and that the kind of intrusive thoughts enter, and they just decide to fucking do something crazy with it. They're exactly the same keeper with the ball at the feet. They're exactly the same person. That there's an argument that maybe, I think it was the Newcastle game, Johnson did the same thing in the first half quite a few times, where he's just slow on the ball. I don't think his distribution is that bad. I just think his kind of brain doesn't engage quickly enough. He just seems like he's slow. And when you think of like instinctive saves and instinctive passes where they've just not got time to make a decision, they're both very similar in the fact that they are very, very good goalkeepers. But then when you start looking at other goalkeepers and think, I don't think anyone's expecting Sam Johnson or Jose Sarr to become Edison or Alisson overnight. But what I am expecting is the coach and the manager to look at it and think, we're creating our own problems. And it's not just Sam Johnson. I think second half, Lamina had the ball put into on the edge of the box when he dropped to centre back, and he's given the ball straight back to I think it was Salah who put it wide. I like to think I'm quite a forward-thinking, progressive bloke when it comes to football, similarly to you. Maybe not Cooper, he's a little bit of a fucking dinosaur, isn't he? But he's a keeper though, isn't he? So it's to be expected. But like, I'm not expecting play it long to Strand Larson and play off the knockdowns. But if you're creating a problem for yourself and you've done it once already and you've got away with it, have 10 minutes where you just get the ball to the pitch, and create a bit of confidence, keep the ball. Whereas we just don't seem to have that critical thinking where we just kind of play it sensibly. And I know Gary O'Neill wants to play his way, and I get that. It's admirable. And I think Matt made the point a couple of weeks ago that Gary O'Neill just tends to look after his own PR maybe before he looks after anybody else's. He doesn't want to be seen as a bloke who's leathering the ball up the pitch. But if you haven't been given the players that you want to play that system, and that's probably the argument, if you're going to replace Jose Sarr and you're going to spend 12 million quid on Sam Johnston, it's very hard to believe, being involved in the industry to a degree, there are keepers out there that can pass a ball for 12 million quid. There were keepers available this summer, particularly in France, that are available for that kind of money. We chose not to do that. We chose to get to resolve the homegrown quota issue rather than resolving that in another way, i.e. ship one of the non-EU players or one of the non-homegrown players out the squad rather than bring a new one in. And we've still got Jose Sarr sat on the bench doing nothing. He's not going to get a kick now, so why is he still there? Mm-hmm. So I think from a recruitment perspective, we'd probably let Gary O'Neill down there. But then you've just got to be willing sometimes to let go of what what the ultimate goal is. You're playing Liverpool. If you're playing against like an Ipswich or a Southampton, no disrespect to them, then okay, maybe that's the time to do it. If you do go a goal down, you're going to get opportunities to maybe get a goal back. But Saturday, 1, 2, 3, 4 situations maybe that we've created a problem for ourselves. There was definitely 2 in front of me in the safe bank in the first half, and I think there was another 2 in the second half. Just deal with it in a different way. And I understand the following orders, that they're following the way that the team want to play and the way the coach has set them up. But we are just the masters of our own downfall every single week, and it's like it's becoming quite tiring now for me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like both goals avoidable. I think the first goal, like we've said already, is frustrating. The second goal is annoying as well because obviously getting ourselves back in the game, albeit quite a fortunate goal, just complete miscommunication between Alisson and Konate. I think we take advantage of that, but we force the error. Strand Larson was the one that put the pressure on. Forbes is up there and been a nuisance, and Ait-Nouri follows it in. Great. Then you want to sit on that, build on it, because we had some really good momentum throughout the start of the second half. And then you do something as daft as Semedo did. Jota is, ultimately all of those players at Liverpool are top 6 players. They're very, very good squad. Jota's a very clever player. We saw it at Molineux for however many years. As soon as you put your hands on him, like you said earlier, Joe, you're giving the referee a decision to make. It's one of those. I think if Anthony Taylor doesn't give it, do VAR say, or go and have a look at the screen because we think it's clear and obvious? Maybe not. But ultimately, I think they're always going to side with him because although it may be soft, it's a foul.
Well, there's the initial mistake, isn't there? There's allowing him to get in front of you in the box. That's the first mistake that Semedo's made, and then he's felt the need to kind of grab him round on the shoulders, wasn't it? Whereas like there's no real need to do that for me. I love Semedo, and I'll probably defend him too much. But on this one, it's like that one sits with him, unfortunately.
He struggles with that. I think he really struggles with defending crosses, doesn't he? I think that,
especially at the back post. Yeah,
I think that's probably one of the biggest differences between him and Matt Doherty. I think in terms of defending like aerially, I think Doc can do that a little bit better.
Well, how many times have you seen kind of Doc place himself on the back post and just attack the ball, as in knock it out for a corner, get it back out? He's so good at that, and I know Doc gets a lot of stick, and I'm not suggesting put Doc in for some other, but I completely know what you're saying, because when it comes to defending those kind of crosses, particularly, I'm still scarred from the Brighton game last season with Matoma at the back post a couple of times. It's not even like you're dealing with, the Strand Larsens or Haalands of the world that are massive and you can't defend against them. In both cases, you've got Kero, Mitoma and Jota are about 6 foot combined, fucking stood on each other's shoulders. So I don't know. I don't know what it is with him. I don't know if it's a concentration thing where he's letting him go, and players like that, we've seen it for years with Jota. He only needs a split second, and he's unbelievable at that kind of stuff. But it's just so poor. I was really pleased with what Strand Larsen did with our goal. I think the way he stayed with it. Kanate was getting kind of. I saw a few videos after. I think they give Kanate man of the match.
I thought he was awful. Not awful.
Oh, I did. I thought he was poor. I thought he was poor.
Yeah.
I thought, especially for that, it reminded me very much of
Benjamin Mendy
getting weights by Adama.
Yeah.
It was exactly the same situation, and it was, don't get me wrong, it was lucky that we found the ball to ignore it, because it was like pinball in the box. But it comes from that kind of persistence and the pressing, and I think that was a really good example of it. But the goal we conceded straight after was just pathetic, really.
Yeah, I don't know what I was expecting in terms of atmosphere. I think I very quickly mentioned it on the reaction. But I think, a lot of negativity going into it. I think everyone always wrote this game off, Joe. I think everyone's eyes are really on next week's game against Brentford. But sort of even after the game, there were no real sort of jeers or boos. I think everyone showed their appreciation to Gary O'Neill and staff and so on. Obviously saw Lemina in tears at the end as well. At the time, I was like, what's he doing? But I suppose now it's almost a bit desperate, isn't it? They know they're doing, in terms of work rate, especially Lemina, being put wherever, played about 6 different positions on Saturday, but working his socks off, and just they're not getting any reward for it.
No, they're not. And I saw a few people on social media slagging him off for it. I've got no real problem with that. If he's bringing emotions out of him, 100%. And he's got past history for it with Fulham as well. I know when we beat them, he did the same thing. So he's an emotional guy, and I think people saying, that mate, he's not a great captain because of that. I don't necessarily buy that. I think a captain should be the guy that leads the team in the dressing room, and we whinged all last season that Kilman wasn't the man, which I agree with. Whereas you can tell, I was watching that FC25 video with them all at the Dome, at the home of the Talking Wolves trophy. Yeah. I was watching that, and you just get the impression that they hang on every word he says. He's the leader, and he should be the captain of that team. I'll die on that hill. I think he's the right man for that. I think there's a leadership group with him, Cunha. Maybe some of the more senior players, Doc as well, in fairness, where they are leaders naturally. I know that sounds odd about Doxy, but they've got the experience. They are the older players. It's quite a young squad. He's absolutely the man. There's no one else in that squad, I don't think, that would be a captain, because Cunha's very similar. Cunha's an emotional guy, I don't think there's necessarily a problem with that. But you need to see it on the pitch. And I don't think Lemina was terrible on Saturday, and he's playing against that midfielder, Szoboszlai, McAllister and Gravenberch. For me, is up there. It's probably the best midfield three in the world for me. They're unbelievable at what they do, and to match them, which I think we did in midfield, really. Joe Gomez was strolling out with the ball. Andre was good again. I think we did well, but it's just, you've got to find that like you say, the Brentford game is massive, but we have had. I know we've had tough fixtures, but we have had the likes of Newcastle at home. We've had the Forest game. I know we got a point there. But if you've got such a tough run, such a tough run at the start of the season, those are the games you've got to go and get the points, especially with the likes of Newcastle where we're winning the game, especially Villa away where we're winning the game. Saturday, we've pulled it back to one each. We've had opportunities to get points. It's all well and good pulling the fixtures out, but we've had opportunities to win games. We've been in the driving seat in games, and on at least 3 occasions, you could probably add the Chelsea game to that as well. Half time, I think we were the team to go and win that game.
Mm-hmm.
We threw it away. So don't quite buy the fixture kind of things. I was looking at Brentford's games, and I was looking at a couple of teams' fixtures. Most of them have played 2 or 3 of the top 6. So I still think there was opportunities there for us to get points. But the Brentford game, sadly, is massive, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to talk about it now. You mentioned earlier, Joe, in terms of the squad, and I agree. I put a tweet out last week after the Mascara's injury. I said, I think this could make me and the season's going to be even longer than it already is, but I still have full faith in the quality that we've got in this squad. We shouldn't go down. We shouldn't. A defeat here on Saturday, do you think that piles a hell of a lot of pressure on Gary O'Neill? I know there's no real... I mean, the 2 pieces of communication we've sort of had as such. There was a sort of a tweet from Ben Jacobs a couple of weeks ago. I think it was before or just after the Newcastle game, saying that, they've still got full faith in Gary O'Neill. They're not really sort of taking into consideration last season's results. We have the Telegraph article, which I think was possibly a bit of a waste of time, in my honest opinion, in terms of what the club would have gained from it. I think it's just sort of part of it made out they're even sort of more incompetent than we thought in regards to some things. But I think everyone, like I said, just in terms of Saturday's game against Liverpool, I think we had that appreciation and the applause and stuff because we sort of already wrote that game off. And I think all eyes are on this game against Brentford, Joe. A defeat here or a comfortable defeat for Brentford, a win for Brentford, sorry. Do you think that piles a hell of a lot of pressure on Gary O'Neill?
I think naturally it probably does, but I still think in a weird way, if we get beat in the right way, which you can, if you're using Newcastle and the Villa games as bad examples, bad ways to lose a game. You're winning, you're in control. We sat back second half, we've conceded. That for me, and I said it quite openly at the time, that was the point to pull the trigger for me, because once something happens twice, it creates a pattern, doesn't it? And the second half at Villa for me will stay with me for quite a while, because to go from being so good in the first half to being so shit in the second half, at what looked like a conscious decision to switch to say, right, let's sit back now. That for me was moronic. On Saturday, I saw something different. I saw a little bit of. I saw there was kind of an impetus there to want to go and do something. We didn't execute it very well, but we got back into the game. We came back from a losing position, which we haven't done too many times this season, if at all.
Twice against Chelsea, although we did.
Yeah, and then fucked it still. So for me, I'm kind of back in the neutral camp really now. If it all depends on how that game plays out against Brentford, because if we've threw some leads away. I think Brentford have scored in the first minute in 3 games in a row, and they've only got 1 point from those 3 games. So they're a team that can be beaten. And with the injuries they've got, on paper we are a better team. I'm quite comfortable with that statement. Maybe centre back worries me a little bit, but otherwise I think we should have enough to go and beat them. If we don't beat them, that's one thing. If we go and get a point, I think that's a decent result. If you go and get a point at Brentford, I'll take that all day long. It's another point on the board. But if we go and get beat in the manner that we've seen us get beat already this season, then I think definitely he's going to be under pressure, because the players seem, as we've said, they seem a little bit more emotional about it. They seem a little bit more like they're kind of dealing with it in a certain way, and they probably want to see something different in terms of, I don't really hold too much negative feeling towards the players on the pitch, because I feel like they're doing everything that they can. I think in the past, under Large, me, you and Matt sat and watched that West Ham game before Large went in Belgium, and it was dire, but the players didn't look interested to me. But it wasn't necessarily a style or a structure issue, it was just they didn't look arsed. Whereas not just the Lamina kind of emotions, but they all do look like there's something going on there. I think they obviously want to be picking results up. So I don't think he's lost them, which is the key thing. I think he's still got buy-in from the players. I've seen bits with Sarabia, which maybe we'll come on to this morning in terms of where he sits in the squad now and his future. But generally, it's a relatively young squad that seems to be doing what they need to be doing for him. But we need to make sure if we do go a goal up or a goal down, we saw it against Brentford last season, in the league. We battered them. We could have easily sit back, but we kind of we sensed blood and we went for it and we got it. I think 4-1 in the end, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I do think I still think there's kind of green shoots of recovery coming, but another game like the Villa game or the Newcastle game or even the Chelsea game, we are a little bit Jekyll and Hyde sometimes, I think.
Yeah, and I was going to just get the rest of our fixtures up as well for the rest of October, because obviously there's a bit of a break, I think international break after the Brentford game, and then we play City at home, Brighton away, so another two tricky games. We've all sat at bottom. It's one of those, and we sort of discussed it briefly last week. It's even if we lose the next three, for argument's sake, and I really hope that's not the case. I've got full faith that we are strong enough to get 3 points on Saturday. But if you lose those three and you're going into November still bottom and still winless, puts a hell of a lot of pressure on Gary O'Neill to get something against the likes of Palace and Southampton. I think that's probably the sort of the point really where Fosun will make that decision. I'm sure Jeff Shee, I'm sure Matt Hobbs will hope that they don't need to make that decision. I think Fosun of old may have pulled the trigger a little bit earlier, maybe a couple of weeks ago, but I think, they've given this guy a new deal. I think we can all see there's more than enough quality in that squad. But yeah, Joe, like you said earlier, I think Gully tweeted out, didn't he, in terms of the amount of injuries that Brighton have got at the moment, Brentford, sorry, the injuries that they've got at the moment. You look at what should be their starting team, probably a back four or back five. And I'm looking at it player for player. We should beat them. I'm not saying they're a bad football team because they've got some bright players and Buemo's a good footballer. I like Lewis Potter. Carvalho's an interesting one as well. But I certainly think that their back four, we could cause some damage to them definitely. But it's just how we come out of it. If we get, I think, the sigh of relief, you'll be able to hear it from Molineux, from Brentford. You'll be able to hear that sigh of relief if you get 3 points on Saturday, Joe.
Yeah, and I think I was looking at their team for Saturday earlier, and I think they had four centre backs in the back five.
Yeah,
pretty much. Vandenberg's a player that I don't particularly rate. So I think obviously we know about Nathan Collins. We know he's there to kind of get at. I think last season against Brentford at their place, that was potentially the worst individual centre back performance I had ever seen by anybody.
He was
and that's kind of even more so than his kind of appearances for us. So I think they're there to be got at. I think this is where the style of their defence, which is mainly made up of kind of big lads, big strong defenders in the air, which Collins definitely is, Ayer definitely is, Pinnock is. They've got some good players, but I think technically on the ground, if we play in the right way, and this is where Strand Larsen comes into it, we can hold our own in the air against them, which we wouldn't have been able to do last season really, but we managed to find a way. That for me, I think, particularly given the results that we've had, but even if this was first game of the season, I think we'd be expecting to go there and get a result. I remember when we played in the cup as well. It's a funny place down there. It's a strange ground in a weird way. Like because there's not really, in the nicest possible way to any Brentford fans, the atmosphere from Griffin Park isn't really there. No. I remember going to Griffin Park and it was a great little ground. It was a really good place to go. They got on top of you, whereas that ground doesn't have that feel whatsoever. So if you get a goal, that's the situation that I really hope Gary O'Neill doesn't just say, tell you what then, sit back.
Yeah.
Because they're there to be got at, and I think the likes of Hwang don't talk about him. The likes of Cunha and the kind of attacking players that we've got, Forbes and the likes, they want to go for your throat. That's the kind of player that the front foot footballers do not go and play counter attack against fucking Brentford, because no disrespect, Brentford have been unbelievable the last few years, and they've caused a lot of teams a lot of problems. But to be fair, we've always generally done all right against them, from what I can remember off the top of my head. I don't think we've not embarrassed ourselves against Brentford. So when a lot of other teams have, so I think they're there to be got. I think Wissa's injured, isn't he? Obviously, Tony's
Yeah,
gone. Kevin Sharder doesn't really fill me with too
he's
much
injured as well, I
confidence.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're there to be got at, mate, and I think we need to go into it with a degree of positivity. It doesn't help that the 2 games after that, Man City and Brighton, but again, we've been in every game this season other than that second half against Chelsea. We haven't been out of games at all, so I don't suspect that'll change. I think we'll be in games. We just need to make sure that the odd one or two we fall on the right side.
Yeah, Brentford at the moment in the table are 11th, 2 wins, 1 draw, and 3 defeats. The latest win obviously coming this when was it? Sorry, the latest win was they'd beaten Southampton early on in the season, but the last few games drawing to West Ham, losing out to Spurs as well. I don't know, Joe. I think are you going to the game Saturday?
I've got a ticket.
Have you?
I've yet to make my mind up. Yes, probably. Yeah, probably. I'll probably be there.
Have you you've been to the new ground before, haven't you? I mean, you have just.
Yeah,
I've been very lucky that I went to both. I went to the old ground when we beat them 3-0, I think, in League One. And I went. Did we draw with them or did we beat them? I think we beat them 2-1. Neves and Matinho scored.
Yeah,
Totti got Totti's debut, I think, and he got sent off.
Is that the one where Matinho's like? Is it outside of his foot where he's just putting the far corner?
And Totti got sent off, and then he got overturned by VAR, so he stayed on. So when
Tony... I went last season for the cup game, and the one where Joe Gomez got sent off. Did in the first 10 minutes, and we were unbelievable. We were absolutely unbelievable for the rest of that game with 10 men. It was one of the best performances I saw from us last season. It was unbelievable. So, and we've got form on that ground last season, the year before.
Smashed them, and
I do think we can get down there confidently.
Maybe I don't want to jinx it. I don't think we've lost at that ground yet.
I don't seem to remember us losing there.
We beat them the first time. I think we drew. Diego Costa got sent off the one year. I think we drew then.
Did he bite someone?
Yeah, he headbutted Ben Mee, didn't he? He just lost his
That
head.
was it, yeah.
It was like, oh yeah. I think that was one of his first few games. Like, okay, yeah, that's what we sort of all expected.
That's what we signed him for. Yeah.
As if there's not loads of VAR cameras that watch you, Diego. Cheers, mate.
Yeah, well done, mate.
But yeah, big all eyes on that game against Brentford. Fingers crossed, Wolves can turn it around. Joe, we'll go over to the questions now. A lot of it sort of will be similar to what we discussed already. To be fair. Ethan Diggory, if Gary O'Neill tries to get Forbes in the team for Brentford, I'd drop one of the midfielders and play Cunha in the number 10 role. Which midfielder would you drop to try and do this? I think probably the obvious one, which we don't want to admit, is probably João Gomez, Joe, because I think Andre's been very good. I think this is the first time on Saturday. It's the first time I've been able to see him in person because I've not caught him since then. And I thought he looked tidy, and obviously Lamine is your club captain. So if you are to drop a midfielder, it's probably going to be João Gomez, isn't it?
It's one of them. I wouldn't drop João Gomez personally. I made this point yesterday. I think that for me, the natural player to drop, it's not necessarily dropping him. I'd probably rotate someone out for this game because I do think there are games where we'll need those three in midfield. But for a game against Brentford, for me, my move, I think I said yesterday, I'd have João Gomez sat in there with Andre as a double pivot. Let João Gomez get forward if he can. Yeah. Drop Cunha in the 10. Behind Strand Larsen and play Forbes, on the wing. So that for me, I think Ethan, with the question, that's similar to what I would do personally. I don't think we need three in midfield for every game because for me it's just overkill. Saturday it kind of worked because
it's a bigger team.
Yeah, they've got a midfield three. You want to match them up. Gary O'Neill's big on opposition and matching them up rather than Nuno was used to the old, we'll set up, this is how we set up and we'll expect teams to set up against us, which has worked really well. Whereas Gary O'Neill's a bit more reactive to what we're playing, which again, there's no right or wrong, is there? But for me on Saturday, we want to get as many creative players on the pitch without kind of creating problems for ourselves defensively. For me, Andre, and I'm sick to death of making this point in terms of people saying about having a back three and then putting Andre in front of it. It's absolutely moronic to do that because you might as well have four centre-backs on the pitch.
Yeah,
we don't need a back three with a double pivot, at least, in front of them, potentially three defensively minded central midfielder sat in front of 3 central defenders. Don't need it. Andre can do that. Andre can drop in. We've seen it. That's what he's there to do. So Joe Gomez, when he was in Brazil, operated as a box to box player. There's loads of clips for people to go and find where he was up and down, getting on the end of things, similar to what he did for the Lamina goal against Newcastle, where he's in the 6-yard box, doing stuff, doing dummies.
Yeah.
So I do think Joe Gomez can offer something going forward. Whereas on Saturday, granted, his job was clearly to sit there and kind of disrupt, which he did, and he's unbelievable at doing that. He's up there with the best in the league for me at doing that. But I do think he can offer more going forward as well. So for me, I would drop Lamina, but I wouldn't necessarily operate it. I wouldn't call it dropping him because he'll probably cry again.
Yeah. I'd be surprised if Gary did drop him, but I can sort of...
Same.
I think Matt discussed this a week or two ago as well. I'd be interested to see what he does, especially if there are many changes for the game on Saturday. I think Lamina is probably one that he wouldn't drop because of him being a captain, but I don't know, wait and see. But I think a lot of people are pushing for Forbes to start. I think basically, similar to what you said earlier, it might be sort of an off-the-bench situation, but I think Bellegarde, I don't know, Rodrigo Gomez, Sarabia could come in and play. I think it's just his lack of pace, I suppose, Sarabia, isn't it? If you want to try and play on the break, that may be something that lets him down slightly. But I think in terms
I don't think we need to be as rigid as we've been in terms of the setup that we've got. It's almost like other than injuries, you pretty much know what the lineup's going to be, which was very much a Nuno thing. You know what the 11 are going to be, unless someone's broke their neck, they're going to be playing. But like when you've got the creative players that we've got, and we are married to a system, so it's unlikely to happen. But I think we know what the lineup will be on Saturday. I think there's a lot. There'll be, as we've said, there'll be a lot of. I'd like to see Forbes. I'd maybe like to see Bellegarde drop out just for for this game and bring him back in for the Man City game, maybe because of his pressing. That's what I would think. But I think we know what it's going to be, and it's going to be the same, but or as close to what we started with on Saturday. But I do think there's more there, and we need to kind of tap into we can't spend a year moaning about the squad and then have a squad and not use it. It seems really odd to me.
Well, when you're struggling to get results as well, you'd surely try and freshen it up a little bit in certain areas. Obviously, the defence has changed due to injuries and stuff like that, but the front three at the moment, Strand Larsen, Cunha, and Bellegarde has been pretty much ever present for the last 3-4 weeks or so, isn't it? So maybe that needs to change. One thing I didn't ask you about, Joe, as well, is Andre's tackle in the first half. What did you think of that?
Loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it. That's what he's there for. I love it. Don't get me wrong. Do expect to see a red card for Andre at some point this season. It will be coming, and it'll be a good one. Yeah. But I think he's brought something to the squad that we didn't have before. It just in terms of an attitude, in terms of the way you play. We've got a lot of good technical players. We've got a lot of good box defenders historically. The likes of Kilman and Mascara and all these players. In the past few years, we've got players who are good at defensively doing that, but the kind of players who can break stuff up. Joe Gomez and Andre in midfield for me. I made this point a lot when we signed Andre. That's unbelievable to see as a Wolves fan. It's just that for me is what the fans want to see. They just need to see a bit more creativity with it. So for me, the team gets built around at least those two. Those two in midfield are the key to any success we want to have. And I think you can chuck Lamina in there for certain games, 100%. That won't happen because he's a club captain. He'll start every week where he can, I think. But those two players are so key. And obviously, it sounds daft because he plays for Wolves, but Andre is the best 6 in the world, or he's up there. He's absolutely up there in terms of the skill set he's got. You could drop him in any team and he'd be able to do that job. And you will see him do that for a club much bigger than Wolves in the next probably 12 months, I would say, if not 18. He'll go for big money. So we need to kind of enjoy him while he's here, but then we need to make sure we don't fucking send ourselves down so we don't get fucking 15 million quid for him when we get relegated to the Championship.
Yeah. Next question, Andy Smith. Do you think Jose Sá will force his way back into the team before the January window? I think unless there's injuries or suspensions or whatever for Johnson, I can't see that happening, can you?
No. Gary O'Neill's made his bed now, hasn't he? And it's a big decision to make to drop your keeper and then start Sam Johnson for successive games. I think Sarr will be off in January. I would imagine. To be honest, for him, he probably needs to because he's not getting any younger. He don't want to be sat on Wolves' bench, does he?
Of course not. He's too good. He's too good to be sat on the bench, really, as well. I think there's a
Yeah,
role
and
to be there, certainly.
we need to find a role for Tom King in this squad.
Garner's number one, mate. You got to be. Oh, Gary O'Neill's turnaround believer, apparently on Twitter. Given we spent the whole pre-season developing a system with two midfielders, do you think it's time that João Gomez is dropped to revert to this instead of shoehorning all three and playing Lamina out of position? Can't drop Andre and Lamina's the skipper. We've pretty much already, touched on that.
I think you that's where you are, isn't it? Pretty much.
Yeah, that is pretty. If I like João Gomez a lot, and I think it can work with the midfield three, but I think certainly for games like the game against Brentford, I think you've got to add another attacker in there for sure. Yeah. I don't, I think like you said earlier, it's almost wasted having the three in the middle as well. A lot of questions or a lot of people stating what they do about Bellegarde. Kieran Hughes, should we start Rodrigo Gomez over Jean-Luc de Bellegarde? I feel like Bellegarde is offering little in each start. And Rodrigo Gomez had such a good preseason. It's a good point, to be fair, Joe, because his preseason was very productive, Rodrigo Gomez, and then hasn't really had much of a look in, although I think he's been slightly underwhelming whenever I've caught him so far this campaign.
Matt said that to me, and there's not really anything I've seen from him that's made him stand out as being poor. I think the Brighton game, he looked a little bit erratic, maybe, if you're being overly critical. He was kind of like just head down and run like Neto style without the kind of end product. But I struggle to see a scenario in the next 3 months where Bellegarde stays in the team and Forbes and or Rodrigo Gomez don't, because as the fixtures ease up a little bit, and I'm a big fan of Bellegarde. I have been since before he came here. I like him a lot, and I think he's got more to offer. But I don't foresee a situation. He's the player that has to drop out of the team, unfortunately, whether it's because of his standing in the squad or whether it's because of what he can contribute, because he's kind of neither here nor there in terms of defensively or offensively. He's kind of sat in the middle. I think he's the one that makes way. I don't think also there's a situation where we see Forbes and Rodrigo Gomez, regularly together, which is, I think's a shame. But like you say, pre-season, especially in the US, Rodrigo Gomez and Guedes actually, they really did force themselves into it. And I thought we'd see Rodrigo Gomez as a starter in the team, and I still do. To be honest, I still do. I still think that. But let the fixtures turn. I think we'll see more of him.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the main thing. Fingers crossed for Saturday we can turn things around. I was just looking at the rest of the questions. They're pretty much what we've discussed already. So I appreciate everyone that sent them across. But Joe, it's been nearly an hour. So yeah, we've done well there. Just talking. Obviously, all things Wolves, about that Liverpool defeat, and fingers crossed we can see 3 points on Saturday against Brentford as well. Joe, hopefully I'll catch you soon. Where can people find you if they wish?
At Concept Skating on X. That's where I am. Social media otherwise ain't really my thing, but that's where we are.
Yeah, love to see it, mate. Thank you for jumping on. I'm at Dave as a party on the socials, and we're at Talking Wolves everywhere as well. So drop us a follow to keep up to date with all the latest news. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, and let us know what you think in the comment section down below. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, be sure to leave us a 5-star review. But until next time, guys, like I said earlier, hopefully it's 3 points on Saturday. Up the Wolves.